I'm coming from a place now that we're in a very dark place in America, where we have a bully and a thug who is the President of the United States.
The entire world pays attention when Richard Gere speaks. However, no one anticipated that he would use the words bully and thug to deliver a spiritual smackdown directly at Donald Trump. Forget inner peace. Hollywood's sweetest man just rekindled the most improbable celebrity feud of 2025. It's inner beef.
It's about the tragedy that we're all experiencing in the U.S. I mean, the worst of it was a week ago when he decided to completely dismantle and destroy USAID, which is the wing of the U.S. government that was started around the time of Ronald Reagan, I believe.
If a celebrity feud had ever occurred, I think no one could have predicted it. Donald Trump versus Richard Gere, the human Twitter storm versus the spiritual monk. The last person you would anticipate verbally attacking in 2025 is Richard Gere, a man who practically exudes calm and incense while wearing cashmere scarves and a walking meditation app.
Well, I mean, our president has pushed it to the limit. It can't go any further than this. I mean, he came out of reality show television. He's like a game show person. There's no truth to it. There's no center to it.
It is not centered. Gere's brand has been focused on silent humanitarian work for many years. The world will be healed by Tibetan Buddhism and acceptance speeches that typically use words like love and compassion. You would believe everything the man said if he were to give a talk about kindness while holding a lotus blossom on his head.
The number of hate crimes in the U.S. went up enormously as soon as Donald Trump started running for president.
The man whose entire character is based on accepting a public feud reality TV villain check without hesitation. A billionaire who is addicted to Twitter double-checks the former president who once engaged Gere in a verbal altercation. Indeed, Trump's strategy is straightforward if you speak poorly of him. A 200-word social media tirade with sporadic capitalization and a dash of melancholy for taste is what you're getting.
Shock. My wife is in shock. We're all in shock. It was, the people spoke and they elected this president. And that's a fact. But I don't even think the people who elected him really believed that he was going to do what he said he was going to do.
Trump would likely just call him balding Buddha and move on, but Gere is the kind to make fun of him with a well-crafted metaphor about the transience of the ego. It's like watching a pacifist who reads poetry stumble into a WWE ring and realize he's about to face The Rock. This is what makes this feud so delicious.
I hate to say it, but these clowns who are around our president are extremely immature, narcissistic people. So that kind of power and narcissism is deadly.
Here's the real kicker though. No one was even aware that these two were at odds. It's not as though there has been a lot of simmering tension in the past. Richard Gere wasn't out here subtweeting Trump from a burner account or making fun of him on late night shows. The universe itself seemed to decide that we needed a random celebrity feud to liven up 2025, and this whole thing just appeared out of nowhere. A minute Gere was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award with grace, most likely getting ready to express gratitude to the Dalai Lama and his spiritual mentors at the last minute. In front of a room full of Hollywood royalty, he is calling the former US president a thug and a bully. Everyone did a collective spit take at that particular moment, and even those who were clapping were likely waiting. The funniest part is that Trump was most likely watching from one of his opulent hotel suites while sipping a Diet Coke. Did Richard Gere just pop off, completely prepared to make a surprise appearance before the credits have rolled?
Fortunately, we have leaders that stimulate fear, and that fear causes us to do really terrible things. I think that's part of what we're talking about in the film here. The most horrible thing that Trump has done, he's conflated two words, refugee and terrorist.
Because if Donald Trump can't withstand anything, it's an elderly Hollywood star attempting to strangle him, especially one who hasn't insulted anyone yet because they've been too preoccupied with world peace meditation. The entire internet was on fire by the time social media shared the video. Half of the comments praised Gere as the new patron saint of Hollywood clapbacks, while the other half were already writing 700-word essays about how Trump's legacy is unworthy of a former runaway bride star. Everything was going as planned until it wasn't. Richard Gere's victory lap was supposed to be the Lifetime Achievement Award. It was a chaotic, hilarious, and completely unexpected situation. Exactly the kind of mess the internet lives for. A night filled with fond memories. The room was prepared with soft piano music and a highlight reel of a beautiful woman's smoldering looks intercut with pictures of him holding endangered animals in distant nations. Nothing pleases Hollywood more than paying tribute to one of its own with a beautifully presented legacy moment. A modest speech about art.
The administration is pulling back from all of those human responsibilities. And it seems all he cares about is money.
But Gere must have woken up that morning and chosen chaos. He took the podium looking every bit the silver-haired Zen master in his crisp tuxedo and started exactly how everyone expected, soft-spoken poetic, thanking his colleagues' family and naturally the Dalai Lama for about 90 seconds. The whole thing felt like one long, warm meditation session. People were already mentally drafting there. What a class act. Tweets, then out of nowhere, the pivot without breaking his calm, measured tone, Gere casually dropped the two words that would hijack the entire evening, bully and thug. At first, the room didn't even register what had happened. The words were so unexpected, so wildly off-brand, that half the audience probably thought they'd misheard him. A few polite claps carried on like muscle memory, but then a ripple passed through the crowd, the unmistakable sound of rich people realizing, oh damn, did Richard Gere just start beef?
It was much worse than what he even said. The profundity, the dark profundity of what he's been doing in the last week is mind-boggling. This is dark time in the U.S., and I think it's a time for everyone to stand.
Gere must have woken up that morning and decided on chaos, even though it appears that all he cares about is money. He walked up to the podium in his immaculate tuxedo, looking every inch the silver-haired Zen master, and got things started just as everyone had anticipated. For roughly 90 seconds, he thanked his family, co-workers, and of course the Dalai Lama in a softly spoken poem. People were already mentally drafting there, and it felt like one long, warm meditation session. What a class act. Then, without altering his cool, collected tone, Gere casually uttered the two words that would take over the entire evening: bully and thug. The room initially didn't even realize what had happened because the words were so shocking and completely out of character. Like muscle memory, that half of the audience likely believed they had misheard him because of a few courteous claps that continued. But then the distinct sound of wealthy people realizing something reverberated through the crowd. Richard Gere just started a beef?
Part of a universe of overlapping pain and sadness and joy and expectations and dreams and hopes and visions. And I see this world that we're in now forgetting that. And this kind of very foolish tribalism is starting to take us over, where we think we're all separate from each other. And we have, unfortunately, elected officials that don't inspire us in the way we want to be inspired.
At a black tie event in Gere, the energy that only occurs when someone unexpectedly goes rogue, he read the line as if he were reading from a grocery list, completely unconcerned. Then, as if he hadn't just made the entire evening into a meme waiting to happen, he resumed his discussion of global compassion. The internet was already working overtime by the time the standing ovation began, mostly from the front rows full of Hollywood liberals who would applaud someone calling a paperclip a fascist if the vibes were right. It was the kind of subtle savagery that only someone who had spent decades meditating in remote monasteries could pull off. He seemed spiritually above the drama, but also completely here for the mess. A 22-year-old graphic designer was already photoshopping a jeering face onto a Mortal Kombat fighter with the caption, "Finish him," while clips were being uploaded and hot takes were flying. The remainder of the audience, meanwhile, was still taking in what they had just seen, which was a portion of a universe of.
She used to be someone that we had empathy for, used to be someone we cared about, someone we wanted to help. that we wanted to give refuge to, a refugee. We wanted to help.
This was Richard Gere, the Himalayan salt lamp personified, lighting up a former president informally as if he were hosting a poetry bar open mic night in Venice Beach because no one anticipated it. It was all the more glorious. This was no mere Hollywood bluster. If you knew anything about Richard Gere other than his smoldering eyes and flawlessly tousled hair. Zen has been quietly picking fights with powerful institutions for years. The difference is that he usually does it in a soft, whispery tone that makes you feel bad for disagreeing with him. Gere may have the energy of a man who spends his mornings chanting in front of a sunrise and politely apologizing to houseplants if he waters them too much. Gere was out here getting himself long before celebrity activism turned into a carefully manicured Instagram aesthetic, being disqualified from the Oscars for pointing out China's violations of human rights while presenting an award.
I have a problem with him. His impulses are diametrically opposed to what we have evolved as human beings and as a country. But he's not unique, and we see this around the world, that these movements to withdraw, to retreat, to challenge the basic laws of nature, the laws of physics, that we are all in this together.
Not only were Trump's policies on immigration, climate change, and minority rights controversial, but they were also the exact kind of power-hoarding, fear-based nonsense that he has been subtly criticizing for decades. Gere has been preaching kindness and empathy for years, acting as though he were the human equivalent of a deep-tissue massage. Meanwhile, the notion that kindness is for suckers became the foundation of Trump's entire political brand. Without a cosmic collision, these two could never coexist in the same universe. The only question was whether Gere would ever speak up and reveal what he was most likely. For the past 8 years, he has been muttering into his ginger tea. Therefore, it wasn't just a spicy award show soundbite when Gere spoke about Trump as a bully and a thug while he was on stage. It was the tactful conclusion of a lifetime of standing up for the underdog. And if Trump believed he could dismiss it like any other Hollywood dig, he obviously misjudged the strength of a man who can torment an entire persona without ever raising his voice above a comforting bedtime tale. The internet quickly transformed a random celebrity feud into a full-fledged digital circus, doing what it does best. Before Gere had even completed his speech, Twitter was already ablaze.
Around really destroying our country. They're destroying our country at the border. They will allow, in my opinion, because you don't hear the real numbers, 15 million people into our country by the time Biden gets out, which hopefully will be very soon. If they get another term, this country is finished. By the time he gets out, and the people are coming from prisons all over the world. They're coming from mental institutions all over the world, and they're terrorists. And this country is going to be suffering a very big price.
Let's all just agree to lean in and enjoy the ride. The world might be falling apart, but at least we've got two rich guys bickering to keep us entertained, /